Welcome back to Two Keto Dudes. This is Carl Franklin from Connecticut in the United States. In February 2016, I put myself on a ketogenic diet to take control of my metabolism. In just 2.5 months, I managed to reverse all my markers of type 2 diabetes with diet alone. As of now, I'm 80 pounds lighter with no signs of diabetes or heart disease.
Hi, I'm Richard Morris in Canberra, Australia. I've been on a ketogenic diet since April of 2014. And when I started, I was very sick with complications from type 2 diabetes. And within 6 months of starting a ketogenic diet, all of my biomarkers of disease had disappeared.
See ya!
I've lost about 100 pounds, and I've completely turned my health around.
And this show is a document of my progress through ketosis and Richard's experience thriving for years in ketosis.
Oh, yeah.
Well, actually, now it's just a document of our success being in ketosis for years.
It kind of is.
Hopefully that might help a few people who are curious about this kind of dietary hacking.
Yeah, we're not doctors. We don't want to give anyone any medical advice, but we are keen to share our own experiences. We're actually both software developers, so we're not afraid of a little technical detail, are we, Carl?
That would be null. Software joke there.
We've done some research into our own deranged metabolisms and the science behind that. We hope to share some of that research. Where possible, we intend to put links in the show notes to cite research supporting any claims that we make.
You'll probably work out pretty quickly that we're both foodies.
Oh, yeah.
We love to cook and we love to eat.
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
In every episode, we both share a keto recipe that cannot, and I say cannot, and will not
be ignored. Not this week, it can't.
So let's start podcast number 104. What we got wrong.
Heard you say you're due for a little.
Wait a minute. 104, 52 weeks a year? Does that mean this is our second anniversary?
Why, yes, it does. Happy anniversary.
And I didn't buy you any flowers.
I know. I'll raise my Two Keto Dudes coffee mug in your direction, sir.
There you go.
Congratulations.
I promised before the end of this episode we're going to be making some chocolate.
Probably.
My job in promising that for the past month.
Probably. Well, do we have any apologies or corrections from last week's show?
So that was the episode with Ivor, and he was flawless, as he always is.
Yeah.
But we actually had one person complain about a comment that we made about anti-vaccination and anti-fluoride movements.
Okay.
And this came from Lisa, and she says, I have a bone to pick with you. As ketoers, we all understand the difficulty of going against the current system of conventional medicine and dietary wisdom. We all know it's extremely hard to change the status quo due to the financial incentives and politics involved. Most people, not us, assume our doctors and governmental health agencies know best. Here's my problem. In your last podcast with Ivor, you guys spoke disparagingly about the anti-vaxxers and anti-fluoride people, actually dismissing them as weirdos. Have you ever seriously researched these topics yourself? Well, I have, and it's truly disturbing. Many brave scientists and doctors are speaking out and being ostracized and financially harmed for doing the right thing, similar to many keto doctors. I'm not suggesting that you take on these issues. One can only effectively focus on so much, but I'm asking you to be more open-minded and at least not belittle those trying to get that knowledge out and to greatly improve public health. We're all trying to help humanity here, so sorry for the scolding, but I felt it was necessary. And I would say that ketogenic diets and anti-vaccination really are not necessarily travellers together on the same road just because they're both leading away from the commonly accepted view. There was a doctor in England called Dr. Andrew Wakefield who published pretty much the seminal anti-vaccination study in the British Medical Journal. And it turned out when people tried to replicate it that it was quite fraudulent, unfortunately, and there was a lot of cherry-picking of data, there's misrepresentation of the math, there were ethical concerns about getting the data from underage patients and not getting their guardian's consent, and there's a lot of things that went wrong in that particular instance that ended up embarrassing everybody. It certainly embarrassed the British Medical Journal, and they essentially campaigned to have him stripped of his medical license. So, of course, one bad apple doesn't necessarily mean the whole field is bad, but it's not a good look. And on the nutrition side, most of the fraud happened on the other side of the fence. The people who were supporting the diet heart hypothesis and the food pyramid, A lot of their data is cherry-picked. They selectively published. If they didn't like the results, they would hide the study results, or they would publish it 18 years later in a little-known journal. And most of even though there's not been a lot of study supporting a ketogenic diet, because there's the kind of people who fund those kinds of studies aren't interested in that particular part of the story. The few studies that we do have really do support the fact that there is a clear evidence that a ketogenic diet for type 2 diabetes really is an appropriate treatment.
Yeah.
So I would say that I mean, I can only pick one battle to fight, and I'm not really interested in calling anyone weirdos. And if I did call somebody a weirdo, I apologize.
I think that was Ivor who called them out as weirdos, and we didn't challenge him on it. I really don't know enough about it to have that argument. But Lisa does bring up an important point that we should be respectful and mindful of other opinions and look into the science before we make comments like that. But maybe Ivor has, and he just didn't share the details. So, but thanks for bringing that up to us, Lisa.
Yep, thank you, Lisa.
So let's revisit what a ketogenic diet is. Ketogenic diet is any diet that puts you in a state of nutritional ketosis. That means you're burning fat as your primary fuel source
instead of glucose.
And the byproduct of that fat burning is ketone bodies. Ketone bodies and fatty acids are used to fuel your body.
Yeah.
And in order to get there, we have a surefire way to do that, which is to reduce your carbohydrate intake to 20 grams or less per day.
Yep.
And not just the amount of carbs, but the source of those carbs. If all 20 grams of those carbs are sugar, well, you may have a problem. But we want to get our carbohydrates from green leafy vegetables, dairy products, nuts, that kind of thing. So replace all the sugar and starch in your diet with healthy fats. And your protein should stay moderate.
Yeah, it's going to be around about the same as you'd be eating on a standard American diet. I mean, don't go out of your way to eat a high-protein diet. That was the mistake everyone made with Atkins in the first go-round.
Right.
But for us, it's between 1 and 1.5 grams per kilogram of lean mass. But, it's not a large amount of protein. Protein we don't really need for energy. We need protein to build our body and to most of our body is made of protein. So, that's its job.
Yep. And if you're fasting, you kick off the autophagy process, and there's your protein right there. So if you have the extra body fat to support a fast, that's how you can get your protein, interestingly enough. So how was your week?
It was interesting. My ketones have started to come down. They're still high, but they're now in my normal range. So
cool.
Where normally my ketones would be 0.2 to 0.8, they're pretty much around 0.8 all the time now. So I was eating glycine to enable me to be efficient at making collagen, or and I make sure that I had all the raw ingredients to make collagen to support this dental implant. Well, I observed this metabolic byproduct, or metabolic side effect, where all of a sudden I started making a large amount of ketones. For me, a large amount. Yeah. Well, they've started to come down, or they appear to have started to come down a little bit. So it might just have been sort of a honeymoon effect with the sudden change, and maybe my body's now getting used to that level of glycine supplement that I'm having, and so maybe that
it may be that your body is uptaking more ketone bodies too.
Who knows? So I think the easiest way to work this out is once I've done the talk test, I'm going to go back and I'm going to stop the supplementation. I'm going to stop eating food with a lot of connective tissue like pork skin, and I'm going to see whether the observed metabolic effect goes away. Yeah. And if it does, then I'll start to add it in a little bit and see what the minimum effective dose is for me. But it's an interesting experiment to take on. Yeah.
I got myself some glycine too.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, we've had a lot of experience. A lot of people on the forums have been saying, yeah, I've noticed the same thing. So
yep. I've been taking it for a couple of days, and I haven't started measuring ketones yet, but I will.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put a pin in it right now and call it a potentially interesting observation.
Right.
I don't really want other people to start supplementing glycine because Richard's doing it.
Right. Yeah.
But I appreciate you joining me on this quest.
Sure.
So how was your week, Carl?
I had a good week. I started out with a good 2-day fast, which always makes for a good week. I got a subscription to Dry Farm Wines.
Interesting.
Dry Farm Wines is a company, and I'm not making a plug for them. They're not paying me for this. I actually subscribed and paid my money, and I get 6 bottles a month of red wines. They're the wines that they find, and they do find them. They're not all made by this. It's not a vineyard, basically.
Okay.
They find wines that have close to zero residual sugar.
Right.
And so they're guaranteed less than 1 gram of carbs per liter and less than 1 gram of sugar per liter, essentially.
Nice.
So they're very dry. What I learned about residual sugar, just doing some research online, is that yeast turns sugar into alcohol, right? So
that's right.
To make a wine sweet, you have to, at the point where you want it at that particular alcohol to sugar level, you have to inhibit or stop the fermentation process.
Gotcha.
And winemakers do this by adding sulfites.
Interesting.
And sulfites don't actually kill the yeast. They just inhibit it for a while. The yeast will eventually recover.
Yeah.
So that knocks out the wild yeast long enough so the cultured yeast added by the winemaker eats up most of the sugar. So if you let this process just go on naturally, you don't add sulfites, then you get as much alcohol out of the sugar and you end up with less sugar. However, the Dry Farm wines also say they're lower in alcohol than some wines are. They're 12%, which to me sounds about normal. And it doesn't taste any more alcohol-y or less alcohol-y than other wines. But the stuff that I've had is very good. And while I'm on the subject, there might be some of you who are saying, Carl, didn't you quit drinking? Remember on the show? I said I quit drinking?
September the 12th, 2016?
Yeah.
Not that I remember, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so what happened was, and I did this because my wife had and I don't think she minds if I tell the story, but she had some liver problems. The doctor, her liver numbers came back kind of wonky. And the doctor said, we're going to give you some supplementation. And by the way, probably a good idea to stop drinking. So she did that for her own health and found that it was hard when we had, bottles of makers and stuff in the house to, just because it's, hey, the end of the week, end of the day, have a drink. It's right there. So to support her, I got it all out of the house.
Nice. Well done.
Yeah. And I'm still doing that. We don't have liquor in the house, but she doesn't drink wine. And so I still have my wine with dinner, that kind of thing.
So that's your free pass then?
Yeah, that's my free pass.
She doesn't drink wine. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome.
Also, the other thing I want to mention this week is that Richard and I have also been working on some software together to help us with podcast production, and it's looking very promising.
Oh, Carl's doing most of the work. I'm just pointing and laughing.
Yeah, but it is helping to shave off hours, which is always good. That means we can produce more podcasts in the same amount of time. Well, I feel like giving something away. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. What do we got?
Well, we got our standard Keep Calm and Keto On coffee mugs with our mugs on them.
Just for something different.
Yeah, we're going to be a little different today.
Yeah.
And each week we give away a coffee mug to one lucky member of the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. And to join, it's very simple. You just go to fanclub.2keto.com and you answer a few questions and put in your email address. And you register yourself to win a mug or whatever else we happen to be giving away on the show that day. And so we just picked a name at random today.
And who have we got?
Well, the winner today is none other than Melanie Cruz. Yay!
Well done, Melanie. Congratulations. You got a mug with our mug on it.
Yeah, and Melanie is also a donator. She's made a donation to us on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Yep.
That doesn't guarantee you're going to win the competition, though.
Nope.
We don't know nor care.
That's right. She just happened to be on that list too. So thank you, Melanie.
And if you don't want to wait to win a mug by, say, waiting to win the lottery, you can always buy one at gear.2keto.com and pick yourself up a T-shirt or a onesie or an apron while you're there.
That's it. And that brings us to a little section we call...
I'm going to go first.
Right.
I've got one here, and this is from Tammy Steve on our forum. This is actually, I think, from Steve Kidd, but the account is used by both Tammy and Steve.
Okay.
And he says, everything is hard in the beginning, no matter what you are talking about. When Tammy converted to the ketogenic lifestyle, I didn't follow along in the beginning as I thought it would be just, a fad diet, and so I passed. But I slowly worked my way in about 6 months after she was on it, and I shed 20% of my body weight in about a year, from 234 to 188. And I've been hanging in the 186 to 190 range for over a year now. Yes, she has way more motivation than anyone I've seen on the keto lifestyle, but I figure she's added years to my life by getting me on it. My dad died at 52 years old. That was 20 years ago. He died from being grossly overweight and diabetic. He was muscular and athletic in his youth and college years, but as time went on, he wasn't. Just like most of us, and the weight packed on. At 5'8", he stayed around 320 to 350 pounds ever since I can remember.
Wow.
The diabetes was diagnosed in his late 30s, and he never did anything about his weight/eating habits other than taking insulin twice a day, thinking he would go on forever like that from the medicine the doctor prescribed.
Yuck.
And I'm just going to mention here, I'm 52 years old.
Yeah.
I'm the age his father died. I'm a little bit taller than he was, and I started out about the same weight. I was almost on insulin. I was getting close, and I was diagnosed as diabetic in my late 30s at age 38. So
interesting.
I see my own story in his.
Wait,
story
this
about
is
his
your
father.
son.
I don't have any of those that I'm aware of. So anyway, Steve goes on and he says about his father taking insulin twice a day, thinking he would go on forever like that from the medicine the doctor prescribed. And at 46, he became disabled and had numerous other problems that all came from the combination of the obese weight and diabetes and no motivation to change personally.
Yeah.
When you're gone at 52, you never see your golden years of retirement, what you've worked for your entire life. You never see what success your children become in their adult life, and you never see your grandchildren. I was probably going to be on the same path as he was if I hadn't have done something about my weight, as it was slowly gaining a few pounds every year, and my overall eating habits were not great. I'll be 50 in 3 months, and Tammy will be 52, and with the exception of my thyroid pill, which I'm stuck taking because they removed my parathyroid gland years ago, neither of us take any daily medication, and our medical numbers/blood work look straight A student scores.
Yeah.
It does work, but once again, nothing is easy in the beginning.
Right.
And he says, no one likes change. I was stressed out and moody, and I didn't like giving up my daily 6 to 8 cans of Coke. Didn't like giving up my Reese's peanut butter cups. Didn't like giving up my Little Debbie snack cakes, my McDonald's French fries, chips. Can I say I don't miss them? Hell, yes, they tasted awesome, but you've got to decide how you want to live your life. And I've seen it firsthand that being overweight and unhealthy will shorten your life vastly. And think about the quality of life when it comes to what you're able to do physically later in life. As I watched my dad basically become bedridden or in a chair for the last 6 years of his life from 46 to 52, and think about all the things that he missed in life because of those choices.
Yeah.
You do what you want. I'm not here to preach or point a finger at you, but I'm just telling you about my family history that was shortened. My vision of my future and why I chose to get on board and stay aboard the keto lifestyle with Tammy. One last thing I've got to add. Have you heard the phrase pay now or pay later? Well, it's much more expensive later.
Sure is.
The saying's not just about food costs or eating healthy. This is about paying for your bad decisions later in life, whether it be spending $600 a month on prescriptions like my mother does now or losing 20 to 30 years of your life like my dad did, just because of a lack of dedication or being scared to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
That was an interesting story from Steve. Thank you for that. And there's a long thread of people seeing their own story in his dad's story. So, this ketogenic diet, it sounds trite to to get on a diet and lose some weight. But,
Right.
for a lot of us, this is really turning our lives around.
Come for the weight loss, stay for the health benefits.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's my mail. What have you got there?
All right. Well, I'm going to read a brand new 5-star Apple Podcast review from Jim in the UK.
Nice.
And for those who don't know, Apple Podcasts is the new name for iTunes podcast reviews.
Mhm.
They're Apple is sort of moving away from that brand. Anyway, Jim says, I've lost 202 pounds from 462 to 260 with a ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting over the last 18 months.
Wow.
All right, let me read that again. 202 pounds in 18 months.
I know, it's incredible.
Wow. My type 2 diabetes is in remission. And despite being diagnosed with ascites, that's basically an infection and inflammation of the vertebrae.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the best health of my life. The theme from the very beginning has been taking control of my own health through the knowledge so generously provided by the other engineers, doctors, scientists, and knowledgeable people who are bravely sticking their necks out and standing up for what is right. It started with Ivor Cummins' interview with the superstar hero Joseph Kraft.
Mm-hmm.
And what engineer wouldn't be a fanboy girl of Ivor after listening to what he has to say? And along the way, Two Keto Dudes has become the gold standard when pointing friends and family in the right direction to start their own journey to reclaiming their health. Humble, calm, generous, and open. This show is how we reach hearts and minds. Keep calm and keto on. Wow, Jim.
Thanks very much, Jim. Yeah.
Thank you and congratulations on that stellar weight loss. It just blows me away. I don't think I've ever heard a story of somebody losing so much weight so fast.
But he's also reversed his diabetes, which is also unknown.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, everyone notices the weight loss. Most people aren't going to notice that he has just managed to reverse a disease that medical science says is only progressive. So,
right.
Well done, Jim.
Well done indeed. So the topic of today's show is what we got wrong. Right, Richard?
Yeah, right. So we've interviewed probably 50 or 60 people on the show. We've done probably another 40 episodes of our own, basically giving the research that we've discovered to explain how we were able to reverse our diabetes and how the diet works for us. But along the way, a lot of these experts taught us a lot of things about ketogenic diets. And so if you go back to listen to some of our early episodes, we got some things wrong.
Yes, we did.
Now is an opportunity for us to actually come clean and talk about some of the things that we got wrong.
Yeah, exactly. We learned a lot of stuff along the way and some things we revised. And there you go.
Yeah.
So why don't you start?
So the first thing that I was really wrong about was BMI. I wasn't wrong about it being remedial math for doctors. That argument really still stands. It's a poor approximation of the high school formula for volume of a box that assumes that all humans are uniformly dense and of equal height and width.
Yeah,
which is
crazy.
Ridiculous on the face of it. Now, what I had wrong was that I still thought that normal BMI was a target, a goal for me to aim for. But here's the problem. I'm unusually dense for a human being. I charted my current BMI and body fat on a population that includes women in one band and then a big gap, and then men at a more dense part of the chart and then a big gap, and then me and a few outliers in a band all by ourselves.
Wow.
So my fat-free mass, according to DEXA, is 80.38 kilograms, and my current weight is 100 kilograms. And so my body fat percentage is 19.6%, which is pretty good. But my BMI is 31.5. Which puts me well overweight. I'm into obese 1 again, obese 1 category.
Yeah.
My mistake is that I thought that my final form would be to get below 25, which is normal. Normal's like 18.5 to 25.
Normal BMI, according to the people who make these things.
Right, insurance companies. But at my height, to be a normal BMI, I would have to weigh 79 kilograms. And my fat-free mass is 80.38. So I would actually have to, I mean, that's 1.5 kilograms less than my fat-free mass.
So you'd have to lose muscle mass.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if I could get down to an impossible 0% body fat, I mean, 10% is low, but if I could get down to the utterly impossible 0% body fat, I would still need to lose an additional 1.5 kilograms not to be considered overweight, according to BMI. So anyway, I've decided that I'm pretty close to my ideal weight right now. I've got enough stored energy to be able to fast for a day without having to, recruit lean mass for energy, and I can do superhuman stuff like go out and ride 100K without having breakfast. So
right.
That'll do for me.
Yeah, I think having the body fat percentage is a far more useful measure of anything than BMI. I mean, that's really what you people expect it to be. They expect it to be, how much fat do I have on me? Right.
We expect that's what BMI is going to be. Girth is another one. Throw a measuring tape around your belly at your waist. That's probably one of the best measures that you can have for it all. But I think body fat percentage is good. Tells me exactly where I'm at, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Very good.
So what have you got, Carl?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about getting wrong is that I thought when I started keto and I was losing weight and everything, was awesome, that I would continue to lose weight at more or less the same rate that I was losing at the beginning there.
Right.
I didn't, I knew that there were people that stalled, and I had heard that kind of stuff, and I looked at stalling as a sort of a failure, as a sort of a dysfunction.
Right.
And then, when I did land, and I landed at about 80 pounds, I didn't change the way that I ate at all. So it certainly wasn't anything that I was or wasn't doing. So I can't see this stall that happens to everybody. I mean, look at everybody has this issue. Every single mail that we've read of people who've had success on a ketogenic diet, they lose a lot of weight and then they stop losing weight. So we have ideas as to why this happens, and people can debate what's actually going on, but the one thing that you can't deny is that it seems to be a very, very common pattern for people who go low carb, high fat, ketogenic, whatever you call it, lose a lot of weight and then stop losing weight.
So there's a good explanation for it. What happens is when you are obese, your body fat, most of your body is insulin resistant.
Yeah.
Your body fat is also insulin resistant, and your body fat's job is whenever insulin goes high, its job is to put the lid on and to not allow energy to release into circulation until insulin goes low again. But the problem is that a type 2 diabetic who's obese has such high insulin all the time, they're trying to stuff so much energy into their body fat, the body fat ends up becoming physically unable to carry more energy. The physical mechanism is that there is such a large lipid droplet inside your adipocyte, you can't get glucose transporters to the surface of the cell to get glucose in to be able to lock up more fat. So what actually happens is you go keto, you drop your insulin, all of a sudden you now can burn energy from fat, and your body fat is still releasing all the energy because it's still insulin resistant. But at some point, those lipid droplets get small enough that now you can get glucose transporters to the surface of the cells, and you've lost 100, you've lost 80 pounds, a very large amount of weight. But the important thing that's happened is that your adipocytes, your body fat cells, have become insulin sensitive. And your insulin is high, now they're doing their job. When your insulin is high, they know what their job is, and that is to hold on to energy. And they're waiting for insulin to come low before they can release the energy again. So I would be proud of the fact that you've hit a plateau, because it means that you've lost so much weight from your body fat that it has become insulin sensitive, and it's doing its job.
Yep.
So that's the biochemical answer to how that happens. But it's frustrating for people because once you get to that point, there are a number of strategies to lose weight from that point.
It all comes down to lower insulin.
And keep calm keto on. Your insulin will lower over time if you just keep calm keto on. If you stay ketogenic for a long enough time, you're exposing your body to less insulin over a longer period of time. You become more insulin sensitive.
And of course, intermittent fasting and extended fasting will help bring that insulin down even more rapidly.
Absolutely.
So,
and working on sleep and all sorts of things. But, you know, keeping calm and keto on is how you get off the plateau. So, congratulations for being on a plateau. That's actually a great thing.
It is a great thing. And most people see it as a dysfunction. I saw it as a dysfunction. I learned that no, it's not. It's completely normal and completely natural. and that keeping calm and ketoing on is the answer. Yep. Next one.
The next thing that I had wrong was I thought that I had to eat 3 square meals a day.
Yep.
And you think, well, there is breakfast time and lunch time and dinner time, and these times are set in stone, and they're on stone tablets, and we must obey them, and thou shalt. And I have learned that breakfast time is a myth. Lunchtime is a myth. Even dinner time is a myth.
Yeah.
These things are not necessarily important.
Nope.
You can go 3, 4, 5 days without eating.
And for people who are just starting, they don't believe us when we say this, that, I could never do that. Well, no, not right now, because you're in a different metabolic profile than we are. We're fat adapted.
You're on the glucose roller coaster.
Yeah, we don't get hungry.
Yeah. Not in the same way.
Not in the same way.
So, so that's it. 3 squares. I learned that 3 squares is also bunkum.
Yeah, that's right. So the next one is, I thought I had to step on the scale every day to measure my success.
All right.
Yeah, because it's a hard number, right?
It's objective. Yeah.
They're correct. You can't interpret it any way, but it turns out you can. I mean, your number of weight doesn't correlate to whether you're losing fat or not, because you can be burning fat off your body and gaining weight at the same time.
Right.
How is that possible? Well, there are other substrates in your body besides fat, right?
Yeah. Well, you could be becoming more hydrated, for example.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Water is a kilogram for each liter of water. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I have never done a DEXA scan, mostly because my doctor wouldn't give me one. Even though I asked for one, they said, you don't need that. You don't have, bone problems or whatever. And I said, well,
osteoporosis.
Yeah, they didn't understand. So I'm in the process of getting a new doctor, and this new doctor, is more hip to ketogenic diet and carbohydrates and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to it. But I didn't do one before I started, so I don't know how much body fat I had. I don't know how much body fat I don't have. But I don't know. It seems like I have more lean mass now than I did before. That's what I'm guessing, but I don't know.
You almost certainly have more as a ratio because you've lost fat in the process. And now remember, you were 360 pounds?
Yeah. 366.
Your legs were used to carrying a 366 pound man up and down flights of stairs. Yep. Now what's happened is, as you've lost body fat, you've probably, this is the experience that I had. My legs have like 9% body fat left. They're nothing but muscle, and it's because they used to carry me around I was up around that range, and I was riding up and down hills. So
yeah, my wife tells me I have awesome calf muscles.
There you go. Most big lads do, but so that's almost assuredly the case that you and you do put on some muscle. This is something Jeff Volek found, was that some of his patients put on a ketogenic diet actually gained muscle as they lost body fat.
Right.
So.
Yep. Well, that's my next one. What's yours?
So I thought I had to calorie restrict to lose weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sure, even though you first go keto and you lose like 70 pounds, your appetite goes down. So isn't that calorie restriction? And this is what, experts who talk about calorie balance, energy balance, say. They say, well, you ate less. So of course you're going to lose weight. All we're doing is eating to satiety. It's satiety is actually doing all of the hard work.
Right.
So, and the fact that I can use that energy finally, as soon as you go on a low insulin diet, you can all of a sudden use that fat for energy, and that's the majority of what's happening. It's not that you're not eating, it's the fact that you're eating and consuming energy that you stored for a rainy day. So,
right. And we all know about insulin. We've learned from people like Dr. Fung that when you eat insulinogenic foods, your insulin level goes up, and that essentially locks the door to burning fat. So your fat cells aren't available as a fuel source. But when you eat fat and you restrict carbohydrates or restrict the insulinogenic foods more specifically, your insulin level goes down. Yes, you've eaten fat and it's more calorically dense, but you've unlocked the door and you've unlocked your body's ability to burn your body fat. So that's why you if you calorie restrict non-insulinogenic foods, that's a different story, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I mean, it's on the outside. If you consider human beings to be a closed and energic system, then the law of thermodynamics insists that energy cannot be created or destroyed, and so if you eat less food, you should be storing less. But it all comes down to how much you use, and the amount that you eat is actually a very smaller part of the first 100 pounds of body fat loss.
Right.
Most of it's about your body being able to use all of that energy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what have you got?
Well, the next one on my list is that I thought I needed to have keto treats all the time, or else I would feel deprived. I was planning on having, crisps, cheese crisps in the house all the time. I thought I had to have sweet things all the time to sort of replace, the sweet things that I had in my life. So I focused on things like chocolate mousse and, desserts. Remember the pumpkin mousse and chocolate mug cakes and things. Now I can't tell you the last time I made any of that stuff. I don't have any sweeteners anymore. Yeah. And, it's just not in my palate anymore. To me, food isn't sweet. It's just that simple. I can't, it's not a matter of willpower. I just don't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, a good meal is a plate of deep fried bacon wrapped lamb chops. That's just what I want to eat. For vegetarians, it may be avocados and coconut oil and macadamia nuts. But to me, that's food. So
yeah, you realize you're ruining my chocolate churros recipe.
Yeah, I know. Now, don't get me wrong. I would have some of that, and it would taste good, but I just don't crave it.
Not every meal.
Yeah.
So my next one is that I thought that a healthy diet required greens.
Yeah.
This is a common thing that, you taught from a very early age that a diet with vegetables and plants in particular is an extremely good diet. And the less plants you have and the more non-plant food like meat that you have, the worse the diet becomes.
Sure.
But in fact, we know people who are extremely healthy. We learned this from Amber O'Hearn. Amber O'Hearn is much more healthy on a diet that has absolutely no plant at all.
Right.
She's on a strictly carnivore diet. And we learned from Nina that meat is nutrient dense, especially offal meat. Is nutrient dense. The liver is one of the most nutrient dense foods on the planet.
Right.
Which I hate liver, so thanks, Nina. But offal also includes skin and bones, and bone broth is delicious, and skin is outstanding. I mean, pork skin and chicken skin. And one of the things about plants is that the major enemy of a plant is not animals like us, it's insects, it's pests.
Right.
It's the insects the locusts that can decimate a crop, prevent it from reproducing. I mean, that's the major enemy of a plant.
And the way plants defend themselves is with chemicals.
Yeah, that's right. Phytotoxins.
Yeah, phytotoxins. So the flavor of a plant is actually some measure of, how toxic it is to insects.
Yeah. And in the case of an insect, I mean, there's some plant toxins that, for example, would prevent an insect from digesting any starch or taking in any calcium or, these are all things that these phytotoxins do. In a human being, because we're such a large animal, a plant is not going to be able to overwhelm our system like it could at insects. That sort of thing kills insects. For us, it just, gives us a bit of a stomachache. But personally, I eat greens because I actually do enjoy them, and I actually hate liver, so I eat greens so that I don't have to eat liver. Good. Thanks to Dr. Sarah Hallberg, who said always add fat to vegetables. I learned, if I'm going to do some broccoli, I don't steam it and overcook it.
No.
I lightly cook it, and I put butter on it, or I make a hollandaise, or
some olive oil or something.
I add a fatty olive oil or some fatty sauce, maybe olive oil and some shaved almonds or something like that. But
yes,
that makes vegetables delicious,
much more delicious. Yes.
So that's it. I learned that I don't have to have greens in my diet.
My next one is that I thought it would be a constant application of willpower to overcome the temptation of carbs, because that's what I had experienced my whole life. And so this is another thing people say when they, when you talk to them about the ketogenic diet. Oh, I could never give up X. I could never stop eating pizza. I could never stop eating
beer,
cookies, bread, beer. Beer is a killer for a lot of people. And so they naturally project, so I'm going to have to constantly say no to all these foods. That's going to be too hard. But as you know, it was only hard for me anyway, until I became fat adapted. So 6 to 8 months later, and it was interestingly coinciding with when my plateau started. Right?
Interesting. Yeah.
6 to 8 months later, it became really easy. Second nature, just habit. Your desire for all things carbohydrate just keeps going down.
Yeah. I just don't see that as food anymore. I don't see bread really as food anymore. The crust is nice, and homemade bread with that yeasty smell. I quite like the smell, but the actual bread, meh.
And more importantly, there isn't a little voice inside your head saying, "Oh, I need to have that," or "I got to have one of those," or you know what I'm saying? Like that just happens.
Yeah.
And so I kind of thought that it might, but I really couldn't imagine it. So that's the next thing on my list.
Yeah. So my next one is that I thought that to be ketogenic, I had to drink a Bulletproof coffee.
A coffee with fat whizzed up in it, in other words.
Or a keto coffee, fat. Normally, it's a coffee with MCT oils or brain octane oil or coconut oil, sometimes butter. But that was only in the early days.
Yep.
I'd have a keto coffee for breakfast, and I'd not feel like eating until mid-afternoon, and that is what they're there for.
Yep.
They're a meal replacement. As Jason Fung says, don't eat a keto coffee or drink a keto coffee and then go and eat more food.
Right.
But one day I just woke up not hungry. Normally I'd wake up and I'd be hungry, I'd have one for breakfast, and then I'd not feel like eating until mid-afternoon.
Yep.
And one day I just woke up and I just wasn't hungry. And I still didn't feel like eating until mid-afternoon.
Yep.
And the answer really there is I was fat adapted. I was able to survive quite happily on my body fat over the night and into the morning, and just keep going until mid-afternoon. And I've rarely had a keto coffee since that point. I think the last time I had one was in Breckenridge this time last year, and that was because Kim bought some vanilla MCT oil to try, and so I was keen to taste what that tasted like, but I'm not a fan of vanilla and coffee together anyway, so wasn't a fan.
What I do with that is on my first day of a fast, I usually drink a couple of tall iced coffees with heavy cream and cinnamon.
Right. Well, that's not really much of a fast, is it?
Yeah, well, it's a certainly lowering protein, which turns down mTOR,
true.
And
that's true.
And it's non-insulinogenic, so it's a great way to kick off a fast. And then the next day, the real fasting, the water and salt fasting begins. So that's the only time I really have coffee with fat in it. So my next one is, I thought the hardest part of fasting would be hunger.
Right. Yes.
And it was at first. It was.
At first.
Yeah. But the more you do intermittent fasting and then maybe an extended fast, the more you do that, the easier it gets. Just like the ketogenic diet. I mean, you got to do it for a while in order to get to that place where it just becomes second nature and easy. And so it turns out that right now, the biggest barriers are psychological and social.
Really?
To fasting for me.
Yeah, peer pressure, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Social meaning, oh, my kids always come over for dinner. I want to cook a nice meal for them. And I haven't yet gotten to the point where I cook a meal for somebody else while I'm fasting and then sit down and not eat with them. Although I know that is the superpower that enables you to navigate these social situations.
Yeah, so for me, I actually really quite like cooking when I'm fasting because my sense of smell is highly attuned, and so I can taste the food just by smelling it. And
interesting.
I sometimes, when I'm fasting, a couple of days into a fast, I'll walk through a food court and identify the spices in the foods around me just by smelling them and thinking about how the food was created.
Yeah, and that brings me to the psychological issues. We're so conditioned to eat every day, at least once, right? We're so conditioned to eat that, you sort of have this little panic. And even though the science is there, you sort of have this little, I have to eat something, And so breaking those habits, and habits take a while to break. So that's why doing an extended fast every once in a while is good, because you then get used to, for many reasons, but you get used to the idea of doing it as a part of normal life. You mentioned walking through the food court and stuff, and I read this book called Breakfast with Buddha. It's a great book.
Okay.
And it sort of introduces the Eastern philosophies to the Western reader through a narrative, through a story about this guy who's, got nothing to complain about in life, but still was sort of just blasé. Life was just sort of blasé. Everything, the trains were running on schedule. There wasn't any problem. But it just felt like he was missing something. And his sister takes him on a journey, basically, with her guru, who's this monk guy. And he's like a lama, he's a Buddhist monk. And the guy's really annoyed by this monk. He ends up going on the trip without the sister and taking the monk. And it's a trip across the country to wrap up the estate of their parents who have died, or mother, the last father, whatever.
Right.
And so it's the whole trip with this guy. All right. So the monk doesn't eat. And, he sits there while the main character is eating a big steak and whatever. And, this monk doesn't eat anything. And so the monk says, what I do is I think about food. I meditate on food to satisfy my hunger, or to satisfy my psychological issues. So he'll sit and meditate and actually think about what food feels like in your mouth, what it tastes like. Try to imagine the tastes and the smells of food. And that helped him get through a fast psychologically, but maybe also something happens. And now I know it doesn't make sense.
No, it does.
Well, yeah, it does make sense and it doesn't, because from what I know about insulin, just thinking about food Jason says anyway, can raise your insulin. I don't know about any tests that show that. That's why I'd love to have a home insulin test, but I have done it, and it is helpful. So there's the psychological issues.
It's kind of like mindful eating without the eating part.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I like sometimes when I'm eating a meal, I like to think about the food as I'm eating it.
Yeah.
And be in the moment of the eating, rather than eating be a competitive thing where you're just trying to shovel in as many calories as you can.
Right.
I like to think about, food as I'm eating it. And that whole mindful eating is part of how people are supposed to get past eating disorders. I don't think I've particularly got an eating disorder other than carbs derange me, but yeah.
Yeah.
But certainly the mindfulness was good. So
All right. Well, what's your next one?
I thought that all fats were equally bad, and then I went low carb, healthy fat, and then I thought that all fats were equally good. But thanks to Nina Teicholz, I learned that trans fats are really bad for you.
Yeah.
And Tom Norton as well. He told the story about the man from CSPI. And and this was interesting. So I managed to ditch. That was pretty easy because I never really liked margarine, these hydrogenated vegetable oils. Yeah, they're not good stuff. But the next point really was the polyunsaturated fats, and it was thanks to Gary Fettke. We spoke to him at Breckenridge last year,
right.
And he said to us that
carbs make you hungry, sugar makes you fat, and vegetable oils make you sick.
Right. So and inflamed, and that's and so basically, I cut polyunsaturated oils out of my diet. I used to use rice bran oil to make mayonnaise. Now I make my mayonnaise with avocado oil.
Yeah.
Now avocado oil does have some polyunsaturated fatty acids in it, but it's mostly monounsaturated fatty acids and some saturated fatty acids, and so it's not these large amounts of omega-6 polyunsaturated fats like seed oils. I just don't have seed oils in my diet anymore. I think probably the only exception would be sesame oil. I have like a drop of sesame oil for flavor, but I don't think of that as an oil.
Well, I think that's it, right? That seed oils and corn oil and oils that are from things that seem like they don't have any oil in them. That's the problem. It's the processing of seed oils that makes them so terrible for you. So I tend to use oils that, when you consider the source, olives are very oily. Okay, so that's very easy. You press the olives, the oil comes out, you use the oil. Peanut oil is another one. Yeah, avocado, but peanut oil is another one that people are confused about. And peanut oil, if because peanuts are oily, obviously you make peanut butter, the oil rises to the top. But they do have a little bit more omega-6 than people think you should have. However, peanut oil is really stable at high temperatures. And so if you deep fry with it, from what I've read, practically none of the omega-6 attaches itself to the food that you're frying it in.
Right. So it stays in the oil in the frying oil.
It stays in the frying oil, yeah. And so I don't know if that's true or not, but peanut oil is a really a cheaper alternative to tallow, which is the best for deep frying, and lard, which is second best.
Oh, yeah.
But I avoid all seed oils.
Yeah, I have nut oil sometimes. So, for example, when I make my fennel salad, I'll use walnut oil or hazelnut oil. But again, to use your analogy, nuts are slightly oily. You squeeze a nut, you can see where the oil's coming from.
Yep.
So, yeah, absolutely. Corn is not oily at all.
So where's the oil in corn?
Yeah. And where's the high fructose in it as well?
Yeah, right.
So, awesome.
So my next one is that I knew I had to eat more salt, but I didn't know how much I needed to eat. And I know a little more about it now that we talked to Dr. James DiNicolantonio in his book, The Salt Fix. That was a real eye-opener. Now, I knew that from listening to Finney and Volek and reading their book that they recommend 3 to 5 grams of salt a day. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think when I asked Dr. DiNicolantonio how much is too much, he said, he thinks that people can tolerate up to 6 or 7 grams of salt per day if they're, ketogenic, if they're burning fat, which means the insulin is lower and your kidneys are flushing it.
Yeah, I think also the other criteria was if they're not hypertensive. If they're hypertensive, so if you go on a ketogenic diet and you become normotensive, so your blood pressure goes to normal levels,
right?
Go for it. Yeah. Knock yourself out. But if you have high blood pressure, even after having a low insulinogenic diet, then you probably need to keep on the low end of things. But
well, that's my next one. What's yours?
So I thought that I had to eat a fat macro.
Right.
You remember when in the early days
Yeah.
where they had the pie chart, and in fact, this was my logo for my own personal blog for many years. You have to have 75% of your calories have to come from fat, 25% have to come from, 70% has to come from fat, and 25% has to come from protein, and 5% have to come from carbohydrates. And I thought that I had to eat that fat macro. That if I had 70% of my calories, I had to eat that on my plate. Now, I realize obviously that your body fat has got to contribute at some point.
Right.
But I thought that I had to modify my macros on a regular basis to make sure that I kept a 20% caloric deficit.
Yeah.
So this is this whole ketogenic macros calculators where you put in your current body weight and you put in how much you want to lose, and and you set up a 20% deficit, and then it changes how much fat you got to eat. Now Stephen Finney came to Australia sort of a year ago, and he had a lecture series, and he taught us that satiety is the key.
Right.
If you have this magical fat macro, maybe you have 136 grams of fat that you've got to eat in a day. What happens if you eat 112 grams and all of a sudden you're full? Are you going to go out and eat the balance?
Right.
Just because the macro tells that you should.
This is just another example of how we fall into this trap as humans of figuring there has to be math involved in order to do anything right. We have to be, so we have to dominate our body with our brain and overcome, the body's natural desires, which are sinful, evil, disgusting, and wrong.
Right.
Yeah,
which we learned from Nick Mailer. I mean,
right.
but math is not necessary unless you get Richard onto the subject of BMI, and then you're going to get math.
Well, and in doing the math, you realize that it was just pure hokum.
Well, that's it. Yeah. I mean, Steve Finney said, satiety is the thing. It's the key. Never leave your table hungry. Satiety, basically, what it does is your body is quite happy to use body fat or plate fat. It doesn't care. It's still the same fatty acids. It's still going to use them in exactly the same way.
Doesn't know what a calorie is.
Yeah, it doesn't care much where it's going to get it from.
Right.
But what it's going to do is your satiety is going to tell you when your body fat is no longer going to contribute to the energy calculation. So what happens is, let's say you got to 0% body fat. At that point, you're going to have all of your energy coming from plate fat.
Yeah.
You're going to be hungry, and your satiety is going to say you need to eat 300 grams of fat to get to satiation. As you lose body fat, that calculation changes, but your body is doing the calculus. It's weighing up thousands of different variables. These ketogenic calculators just don't have access to all the data, and so anyway, the as you lose more weight, your body fat can contribute less energy, so you need to eat more. So you use satiety as a natural signal.
Yep.
So if you don't, let's say satiety is going to kick in at let's say 150 grams of fat is what your body thinks it wants. It needs 150 grams of fat, and you give it 130 grams of fat. So you shortchange it by 20. So you're basically stopping before you're satiated.
Yep.
Okay. So what actually happens is your body has got less energy than it needed. And so what it can't get any more from fat. The reason it told you it's the satiation signals is because it wasn't able to get any more from body fat.
Right.
So what it's going to do is it's going to slow your metabolic rate, and it's going to start finding an alternate source of energy, which is lean mass.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. If your satiation signal is going to come in at 150, but you only give it 120 because that's what the magic macro calculation has told you to do, you're going to slow your body metabolic rate, and you're going to draw down some lean mass to use for energy, to waste for energy.
That's right. And the reason why I got that wrong as well is because, again, we are so conditioned to not trusting our body's hunger signals.
Right.
Because what happens when you're hungry? You eat. And, what happens when you're a glucose burner and you're hungry? You want to eat carbs. And it's the eating of carbs that is the problem, right? That keeps you in that roller coaster of glucose and insulin.
Yeah.
And so we're just naturally leery of our body's ability to give us proper signaling.
We've learned to distrust satiety, yeah.
We've learned to distrust our body signals. So what happens, of course, is, when you become fat adapted, the hunger for carbs goes away, as I've already talked about. And the hunger signals that you have and the satiety signals that you have work.
Well, for most people, Tim Noakes reckons that there's about 10% of people, most of them mostly are women, who, for some reason or another, their satiety signals just don't quite work for them. Yeah. So for some people, but we're talking about, 10% of one gender.
Right.
For everybody else, for the other 19 and 20 people, this is probably going to work. And so that's interesting. And that's the other thing about satiety is that as your insulin gets higher, as we spoke about before, when your insulin goes up, your body fat stops contributing. So you could consider somebody who has high fasting insulin to be in the same case as somebody who has 0% body fat.
Right.
So, and this is why we plateau. We've spoken about this before. This is why we plateau, because our body fat is no longer contributing energy. Now we're hungry the whole time and we've got to get it off our plate. Yep. So, that's why satiety rocks.
Very good. We'll do a whole show on satiety pretty soon here, right?
I think so. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my last one is that I thought I had to cook fancy keto meals that took lots of prep time. And this goes back to my expectations and my projections about what my new keto life would be when I started. And so there are some times when we come to do a show and I need a recipe and I haven't cooked anything all week. Like, I had bacon and eggs. Ted Naiman, man, he says, he told us on the show, I tell all my patients, just eat bacon and eggs for 2 weeks and come back and see me.
Yeah.
And then you have to think about it. Just eat bacon and eggs for 2 weeks. Who does that, right?
Yeah. I know, right?
Yeah. So I strangely feel like I could eat bacon and eggs every day and not tire of them. And, just noshing on meats and, things that I've cooked before, things that are in my freezer, meats that I've made with sauces. Like I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm becoming an anti-foodie.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No,
You're too
that's not going to happen.
To do that.
Sorry, I lost my mind for a minute there, Richard.
We're just going down to smaller plates this year.
That's
That's our goal. So my final one is that I thought that my biggest problem with diabetes was high glucose.
Yeah. Diabetes is defined as high glucose, chronic high glucose.
Yeah, absolutely. Being unable to control your glucose.
It's not defined as chronic high insulin.
Which it should be. Because 15 years before my glucose started to rise, my insulin was already high.
Yeah.
That's the thing is that diabetes at its heart is a disease of disseminated vascular disease.
Yeah.
Cardiovascular disease, diabetic retinopathy, diabetic neuropathy, nephropathy. These are all diseases of the vascular system. And one of our friends, Siobhan, discovered this.
Yeah.
That elevated insulin increases scavengers whose job it is to capture damaged LDL, which includes glycated. So, the sugar in your blood from being diabetic is doing some damage. It's damaging this LDL that's traveling in your circulation system.
Yeah.
But high insulin tells the walls of your arteries to increase the number of scavenger receptors to grab these damaged LDLs and rescue the contents of those for recycling. So insulin, when it goes down, regulates something called the ATP binding cassette transporter, or ABCA transporter, which is, now this is a transporter that is, it's inside the mast cells and it comes to the surface a little bit like GLUT transporters do. And what its job is to do is to efflux all of that contents, the recycled contents of the LDL out of the foam cells and into HDL to be sent away to basically to go to the liver to be recycled.
Back to the liver, yeah.
Exactly. So it's so when insulin is always raised, which is what happens in a diabetic 15 years before their glucose starts to go up, their insulin is always raised. It's like the trash service never visits, and the walls of your arteries end up looking like an episode of Hoarders, you know. And that's what causes cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really this is the problem, is that the high insulin. So I thought that my problem with diabetes was all about glucose, but in fact, you know, this insulin issue is an upstream factor that happened 15 years before glucose went out of control.
Right. And it affects everything. Well, that's our content. We went a little long on that, but man, it's been a great 2 years, and I feel like I learned so much every time I talk to you, Richard.
We got a lot of things wrong, so we had to do a long episode.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Richard, are you hungry?
Yeah, I am a little bit hungry, actually.
I'm feeling a little peckish.
Yeah.
I guess it's time for some recipes.
So we've been doing Spanish tapas for, we were going to do it for 1 month, but we had so many recipes, we just kept going. And so we're getting to the end of our tapas recipes, so we're starting to look at other cuisines. We're doing appetizers, right? So what have you got, Carl?
What have I got?
Yeah.
Deep fried chicken skin egg rolls. That's what I've got.
Oh, so it sounds like we're going Chinese now.
Yeah, I think could be Chinese. I guess, you know, you might call them pot stickers if they were a little smaller, but they're essentially meat roll-ups, you know? They're essentially like little burritos if you think of, I mean, every culture has these, right?
Yeah,
I'm thinking more like lumpia.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a crispy skin on the outside and then whatever you want on the inside. So what I chose to use for my filling is Mexican chorizo.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's the ground chorizo that has the spicy flavor, and it's very soft and pliable, not like the hard stuff.
Right.
So I deep fried these in peanut oil, which we were just talking about.
Yeah.
I got my chicken skins from a meat packing company.
Oh.
And they're, you know, maybe 20 minutes away. There's a meat packer, and they have a store that's open to the public, and you can get all sorts of things there that you wouldn't normally get in the supermarket.
Yeah. They probably just chuck them away.
Yeah. So I called them up and I said, hey, can I buy some chicken skins? And they go, yeah, we got those. How much you want? I said, well, how much are they? He goes, $1 a pound. And it's like, give me 10 pounds. 10 pounds, $10.
Nice.
Yeah. So they came in a bag frozen. I thawed them out. The thing is that I had to sort through a lot of smaller pieces, you know?
Right.
But here's the thing about smaller pieces. Put some salt on them and deep fry them, and you've got these crispy, potato chippy kind of snacks.
Nice.
They're really delicious just by themselves.
Yeah, you can also put them on between two trays, cookie trays with parchment paper in the oven and bake them and turn them into little crispy little cookies. Yeah.
You've actually shared that hint before on the show.
I may have. I tend to repeat myself sometimes.
Yeah, I know. That's good.
I also tend to repeat myself.
And also, you tend to repeat yourself. So you got to find a piece that you can cut into about a 6-inch square.
Okay.
Now, the reason
that's quite large, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite large. And the thing is, I tried smaller ones, and they just weren't as tasty. The chorizo dried out. By the time the skin got crispy, the chorizo was dry. Right. So I found that I'm going to use about 3 or 4 tablespoons, like a nice meatball size.
Well, that's a big chunk, yeah.
Yeah, big chunk. And it's about, 1.5 inches thick. So I wrap that up in the chicken skin, and you want to fold over the sides so that the stuff doesn't come out.
Yeah.
And wrap it up, and you're not done yet. You got to tie it up with some kitchen twine.
You could also use food like chives. You can use a chive.
That's a great idea, too, as long as it wouldn't disintegrate in the oil. Yeah. Whatever you can use.
Yeah, they last pretty well. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I wrapped some twine around it, tied it up, and then tossed it in salt. And I got it nice and salty. And that really helps. Yeah. It really makes it better. Fry them for about 7 minutes till they're crispy and golden brown, and cut off the twine and serve immediately. Now, I was thinking about a sauce, but I didn't have to think very long because these things are delicious just the way they are.
They didn't need a sauce at all.
They didn't need a sauce at all. And, you know, when you think of an Asian pot sticker or an egg roll or something, you're thinking a duck sauce, something sweet.
Right.
And you don't want that.
So hoisin, yeah.
Hoisin sauce, yeah.
You can make up a zero-carb hoisin. Yeah, there are recipes for that around. We've done it before with you could start with the peanut butter and soy sauce and add a bit of sesame oil, and you use that as the base to make your own hoisin. So you could do, if your flavorings weren't quite as tasty as you were hoping, make up a little sauce.
Yeah, I might do that for next week's recipe. Experiment with a little dipping sauce.
Yeah, nice.
Okay.
Nice.
You give me good ideas.
Yeah.
So that's my recipe. What's yours?
Yeah. I've been thinking I really want to do some dim sum, but I get my ass kicked because I've been teasing these churros for like 2 months. So
now that I've moved on to dim sum,
one last tapas recipe. So I've published it on our blog at blog.2keto.com. And these are churros con chocolate, which is, a Spanish street food. It's like donuts with melted chocolate sauce.
Yeah.
And, as we've mentioned before, earlier on in the podcast, we don't have chocolate treats all the time, but it's nice to be able to have them once in a while. And certainly if you have a dinner party and your theme is tapas, this would be a perfect treat to bring out.
Nice.
So to make the actual churros themselves, we're going to bake them. We're not going to. Normally with churros, you extrude a floury mixture into a deep fryer, straight like a donut, and you fry it. But we had to take it a little bit more gently and bake them to start off with to get some structure to them.
Yeah.
So we're going to start this recipe off the same way a regular churros recipe starts off with. We're going to boil about a cup of water. We're going to add some butter to that, 85 grams of butter, and we're going to add a little bit of sweetener, probably about 2 tablespoons of powdered sweetener of some kind. A traditional churros recipe would use sugar, but they start out exactly the same way. So you get this simmering, and then you add the dry ingredients to that, and the dry ingredients will be about 100 grams of fine almond flour, about 40 grams of coconut flour, and about a teaspoon of cinnamon powder. And a teaspoon of baking powder, and we're going to add these to the water that's been simmering and has been just taken off the heater. And then, so what we do is we then add eggs to that mixture, and we mix it well, and we put the bowl into the fridge for 15 minutes to chill. So, I did mention there were 2 eggs, didn't I? Yes.
Yeah.
So this recipe is going to make about 8 plates of food, and this can be frozen. So you can make this whole batch up, freeze them, and then finish them off in the deep fryer at the end. But what we're basically going to do is we're going to take a piping bag, or you can just put these into a Ziploc bag and just cut the end off the bag.
Yeah.
And you're going to pipe these over a silicone baking sheet, or you can pipe them onto parchment paper, onto a cookie sheet. And they don't have to be perfect. They just have to be, churros can be lumpy and sort of ugly. They don't have to all be ideal looking. And if you see the photos on our blog site, mine are pretty ugly looking. Yeah. So I baked them for about 15 minutes at about 350 Fahrenheit or 180 Celsius. And what that does is it hardens them up. So now I can deep fry them.
Yeah, they won't fall apart.
That's right. Yeah, but at this point you can put them in a freezer bag and you can freeze them for a couple of months. So, it's a nice thing to be able to do a whole batch up and then be able to pull out of the freezer and just fry it quickly.
Now, if you did them in a circle, like a loop donut bagel thing, that would work as well, right?
Yeah, you could use a bagel tray for that. Absolutely. In fact, I think now that we're moving on to Chinese recipes, there's a Chinese cruller that I plan to do at some point, and I'm going to use a similar recipe for that as well.
Oh, nice.
Let's say you've baked all of these churros, and then you've put them in bags into a freezer, and you've forgotten about the whole thing. And then one day you think to yourself, oh, I think I might have some churros. So you go to the freezer, you pull out, for Julie and I, we'll probably have 3 churros each. So, with a small amount of chocolate. So it makes sense to freeze 6 in a bag, and, you've got a meal for 2 people there. So what I do is I deep fry them in boiling tallow. In a deep fryer. And you can also shallow fry them in butter. If you don't have a deep fryer, you can throw some butter in a pan and shallow fry them. You want to get them golden brown, and it really improves the flavour. You can eat them straight out of the oven. You can dip them in chocolate; they'll be fine. But deep fry them.
Yeah.
The next step is now you got to make some chocolate.
Yeah.
What I have is a silicone crucible for boiling chocolate. We'll have a look on our blog.
Yeah, it looks like a little fireplace that you'd put on your deck.
Yeah.
You know, has look like an urn.
Like a little urn, but it's made out of silicone, and it's got a top that can go onto it. And what you do is you put cacao butter in there, and you squeeze some of the air out of it, put the top on, put it in the microwave for a minute. When it comes out, it's not quite fully melted through. And I'm for two people, I'm going to probably melt about 50 grams of cacao butter. I'm going to add maybe 2 teaspoons of cocoa powder and a little smidgen of pure sucralose sweetener. Now, you can't put liquid sweetener into melted chocolate because what that'll do is
it'll seize it up.
Liquid will seize it up. Yeah, so it's got to be powdered.
Sucralose works well because you don't need a lot of it, and it doesn't add to the dryness of it. Like if you use a dry sweetener, let's say, you're going to need more of that, and it's going to actually bind it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And you don't even need to have sweetener. You can add a bit of nutmeg or something like that to it and go with like a bitter chocolate is quite nice as well. But, I put a little smidgen of pure sucralose powder in. That does the job.
Nice.
So now we've got 50 grams of melted cacao butter. We've already added the cocoa powder and the sweetener. And now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it into a ganache. And what that involves is adding an equal measure of heavy whipping cream. So 50 grams of cacao butter, 50 grams of heavy whipping cream. Put the little lid on the little crucible, the little silicone crucible, and shake it up and down until that cream has emulsified through, and you end up with a really creamy chocolate sauce. And you can dip your churros into that, and it's delicious. It really is. It's something that you probably thought you'd never ever get to eat again. Donuts with chocolate.
Yeah, right.
Minimal carbs, and delicious.
Well, that's great, Richard. And wow, that's a show, a long show, but a good one.
Yeah. But we finally got to churros.
Yeah, we finally did it. Yeah.
Of course, if you have anything you want to tell us, something we said wrong, something you don't agree with, some more research that you found to support or refute anything that we've said, send it by email to dudes@2ketodudes.com or post it on our website.
And you can follow us on Twitter at 2ketodudes, on Instagram at 2ketodudes, and make sure to use the hashtag 2ketodudes.
And, of course, if you want to join the free ketogenic forum, it's forum.2keto.com.
And if useless swag is your fancy, T-shirts, coffee mugs, and other junk with witty keto sayings on them, head over to gear.2keto.com.
And if you want a shot at getting some of that swag for free, join the 2 Keto Dudes fan club. You'll be eligible to win something in every show. Go to fanclub.2keto.com.
And if you feel like supporting our podcasts and our forums, think about making a pledge on our Patreon page at patreon.2keto.com.
Or just hit the donate button on our website at www.2ketodudes.com or go to donate.2keto.com.
And you can also see all of our podcasts and other videos on YouTube at youtube.2keto.com.
And if you haven't already, go leave us a review on iTunes. That's how new people get to know about what we do.
And by the way, if you're interested in Keto Fest, we're getting ready to launch our Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But if you want to be on the mailing list to know more about it, go to ketofest.com. You can read about what our plans are, when we're going to do it, the weekend of July 21st. And I have a little something that we should probably tell people. No?
No, we shouldn't tell them who's coming. No.
We shouldn't tell them who's coming?
No,
we have
but
a
it's
very
really
special
good.
guest.
Yeah.
It's really good, yes.
You are going to love this news when you hear it.
We have superstars coming to Keto Fest this year. That is, if we make our goal. But go to ketofest.com and sign up. 2 Keto Dudes is brought to you by 2 Keto LLC, who strives to support the low-carb community with podcasts and other publications. Well, keep calm and keto on, Richard.
Yeah, keep calm and keto on, Carl.
All right. And we'll see you next time on 2 Keto Dudes.